The child of my neighbor comes to my house to freeload on meals as soon as it's mealtime. I pity her as a left-behind child. I am tolerant of her everywhere. But who would have thought that she would be insatiable and steal my gold necklace? After being caught by me, I will never allow her to come to my house again. Unable to take advantage, she starts spreading rumors that my husband has molested her. My whole family was burned alive by her enraged grandfather. But she makes a fortune by taking advantage of the pity of netizens. When I open my eyes again, I go back to the time when she comes to freeload on meals. "Auntie, are you at home? It's so hot outside. Can you open the door?" The iron gate of the yard is being knocked loudly. I know that this is Jongtingting from my neighbor's house coming to freeload on meals again. Her father died early. Her mother ran away with someone else in her early years. She has been living with her grandparents since childhood. The only grandfather who cares about her in the family has recently gone to the city to do odd jobs. Her grandma is patriarchal and doesn't like her. She may not even give her a proper meal for 10 days or half a month. At about the same age as my daughter, she is dark and thin. So she starts running to my house as soon as it's mealtime. Seeing her pitiful state, I think that a child can't eat much anyway. So I let her freeload on meals for nearly half a month. In the past, at this time, I probably couldn't help but go and open the door for her. But in this new life, I only have endless hatred for this ungrateful person. In my previous life, it was today that I found out that she had stolen my gold necklace. Although in the end she reluctantly returned the thing to me. But I also won't allow a child with such a character problem to come to my house again. After being shut out several times, Jongtingting holds a grudge against me. Unexpectedly, when my husband went to her house to help repair the water pipe, she took the initiative to take off her pants. She smeared chicken blood all over her body. While my husband was in shock, she cried and ran out of the door. Finally, in front of the neighbors who came, she spread rumors that my husband had molested her. The people in the village immediately got angry and said that my husband bullied the poor orphan girl. She is still a child. Can a child lie? I really didn't expect that you look honest but can do such a thing. Beast. Just like this, my husband's defense was in vain. He was beaten severely by the enraged villagers and directly went into the ICU. And my daughter and I were also vented on. We lived in fear amid the cold stares and sarcasm of everyone. Later, we were directly burned alive by her grandfather who rushed back to the village after learning the news. After death, my resentment lingered. I witnessed with my own eyes that Jongtingting made a big show of being pitiful on the internet because of the heat of this incident. In the condemnation of our family by netizens, she made a fortune. And when my husband learned of the death of me and my daughter, in despair, he directly jumped off the top floor of the hospital, leaving only a large chorus of cheers on the internet. Fortunately, heaven has eyes. Perhaps seeing my family suffer unjustly, it couldn't bear it. It gave me a chance to start over. This time, no one can destroy my family. Seeing that I didn't respond, Jongtingting had no intention of stopping at all. She was completely in a stance that she wouldn't give up until I opened the door. "Auntie, I know you are at home. Is it because you don't like me that you deliberately don't open the door?" As she spoke, there was even a hint of choking in her voice. The pain of being burned alive in my previous life seemed to still be on my skin. Together with my kindness, it was all swallowed up by the fire. I sat indifferently inside the house, listening to her aggrieved crying. In this new life, I understand that if I pity someone, I have to bear their fate. This time, I will definitely not be soft-hearted towards her at all. Under the scorching heat, even the ground is steaming with heat. It's noon. Everyone is enjoying the cool in their own homes and no one will care about her. Since she is willing to sell pity in the sun, then let her do it. Anyway, I won't suffer any loss. Before long, Jongtingting's shouts gradually became smaller. The knocking on the door also disappeared. Just when I thought she had given up, my husband's voice suddenly appeared outside the yard gate. "This isn't Tingting? Why are you crying alone outside in such hot weather?" Come on, come into my house and sit down. My heart tightened, realizing that this was my husband coming back from work. Immediately after, the sound of keys jingled from outside the door. With a click, the door opened. As soon as she entered, the moment Zhongtingting saw me, she started crying loudly. Auntie, is it because you don't like me that you deliberately didn't open the door? Did I make you unhappy somewhere? Tell me, and I can change. Sweat mixed with tears, making a mess of her face. My husband can't stand seeing children cry. Immediately, he was at a loss and comforted her. Don't cry, Tingting. There must be some misunderstanding. It happens to be mealtime. Stay here for a meal today? He cast a pleading look at me, hoping that I would come forward and explain. My daughter is about the same age as her. In the past, seeing her pitiful appearance, I would definitely have softened already. But now I didn't even look at her more. At this point, I must find another way to send her away. So I held my head and let out an ouch. Husband, I don't know what's wrong with me today. I have a headache. If I hadn't heard someone knocking on the door, I would still be lying in bed right now. My husband has always been very caring about me. Hearing me say this, he panicked and supported me to walk outside. What's uncomfortable? Why didn't you say it earlier? Come on, I'll take you to the hospital to have a look. Halfway through, when passing by Zhongtingting, I stopped. I smiled apologetically at Zhongtingting, who looked reluctant. Tingting, your uncle and I may not eat at home at noon, so I won't keep you. Go home quickly. Otherwise, you will be hungry after your grandma finishes eating. After all, she is not so thick-skinned as to stay when the host is about to go out. But I didn't miss the resentment that flashed across her face when she closed her door. After all, since she didn't get a meal, she can only eat the leftover stale food when she goes home. On the way to the city, I seriously told my husband that Zhongtingting could not come to our house anymore. Although my husband is kind-hearted and soft-hearted, he especially listens to me. The matter of rebirth is too strange. I only told him about my previous life's experience in the form of a dream. To enhance credibility, I specifically stated that this was told to me by his parents in a dream. People in rural areas here are superstitious. Hearing me say this, my husband has basically believed more than half of it. At this moment, he has nervously taken my hand and said seriously, "Then what are you going to do to deal with her?" "I will cooperate with you. I will definitely not let you and your daughter be harmed. I already have a set of countermeasures in mind. Not getting a meal this time was an accident. Zhongtingting will definitely not let it go." After having lunch at a restaurant, I took my husband straight to the mall and bought several sets of surveillance cameras. The reason why she was able to manipulate public opinion in the previous life was because the persona she had established in the village was always the kind of well-behaved and sensible type. So what she said is also quite credible. And this time, I will personally tear off her disguise. Before dinner, my husband had installed the surveillance cameras. But my daughter, who should have come back from school long ago, was still not back. Just when I was worried about why my daughter hadn't come home at this point, a small figure had already opened the door and rushed in. "Mom." Before I could even breathe a sigh of relief, I found that there were tears on my daughter's face. "Mom, when school was over today, I was stopped by several hooligans from the neighboring village. I panicked and immediately pulled her over and looked her up and down. My daughter grabbed my cuff and comforted me with a sob. "Don't worry, I'm fine. Thanks to Sister Tingting's help in driving them away, I was able to get home safely. By the way, Mom, can Sister eat at our house tonight?" Zhongtingting helped. I frowned and realized that things might not be so simple. Before I could answer, Zhongtingting outside had already poked her head in and gave me a shy smile. "Auntie, this is all within my power. You don't have to be polite to me." Just as I was about to speak, she didn't even give me a glance. She directly took my daughter's hand and walked into the house as if she were not an outsider. "Sister, didn't you say you would show me your toys? Let's go." What responded to her was my daughter's joyful laughter. I stared fixedly at Zhongtingting's figure, knowing that she might have noticed that I didn't like her. So she planned to start with my daughter, who is the easiest to handle in my family. My experience in the previous life let me know that she is a child with deep thoughts. But seeing this again still can't help but be shocking. My daughter has always been obedient and sensible. She never causes trouble outside. How could there be hooligans bullying her for no reason? Perhaps even the people who blocked my daughter were found by her to achieve her goal. Thinking of this, I immediately turned on the surveillance camera at home. The village is only this big. When something happens, it will soon be known to everyone. I have been married into this village for 7 or 8 years. I also know that the villagers are simple and have zero tolerance for immoral things. I want to expose Zhongtingting's true face. Without the support of the villagers, a child like her can no longer cause any big trouble. In the surveillance video, it shows that Zhongtingting has somehow entered the master bedroom at some point. She crept up and lay on my bedside table. Kept rummaging inside. I deliberately installed the surveillance camera covertly. She never expected that her every move was already under my surveillance. The gold necklace and gold ring from my wedding were taken out by her completely. But I didn't startle the snake. Instead, I turned off my phone and continued to prepare dinner. There are only 3 people in the family. Originally, not many dishes can be cooked. But Zhongtingting is a big eater. As soon as the food is on the table, before the host family has even picked up their chopsticks, she starts sweeping through it. Not only does she only pick meat to eat, but she also makes the dining table a mess. For this reason, every time she comes, I have to cook a few more dishes. This time I won't spoil her. The dishes I made are all the ones I have noticed these days that she doesn't like to eat. After cooking the meal, I told them to wash their hands and eat. Zhongtingting, who still had a green glint in her eyes, frowned in dissatisfaction when she saw the dishes on the table. She didn't give up and rushed into the kitchen again, but came back disappointed. I pretended not to know anything and said with a smile, "Tingting, eat quickly. Eat more celery. It's good for your health." Zhongtingting hates celery the most. After I put celery into her bowl, she slammed the bowl on the table. She was the one who lost her temper first. She angrily turned cold and was about to walk outside. I didn't stop her. At this moment, my husband finally came down from upstairs. I looked at him and nodded slightly. He received the instruction and shouted outside, "Wait, don't go yet. Have you seen my wife's gold necklace?" At this time, it was already late. There were already many neighbors who had finished eating and come out for a walk and enjoy the cool. Hearing my husband's loud voice, people at the door all looked at my house. Zhongtingting's footsteps obviously paused. Her eyes were red as she turned around. Before we could say anything, she became guilty first and blurted out a string of words. "Uncle Wang, what do you mean? Do you think I stole something from your house? I know you don't like me. If it weren't for my younger sister insisting on inviting me today, I wouldn't have come. I kindly sent her home. It's fine if you don't thank me. But now you want to wrong me. Just because I don't have parents and am easy to bully?" As she spoke later, as if she had been greatly wronged, she began to wail loudly. This has always been her specialty. Sure enough, some neighbors who didn't know the truth started to speak for her. "Wang Hao, without any evidence, how can you wrong someone? Usually you seem honest. Who would have thought that now you even bully children? Everyone knows that Tingting has always been well-behaved and sensible. It's not favoring anyone. Let me say something fair. Did you see with your own eyes that Zhongtingting took it? If not, saying such words will ruin her reputation." The dissatisfaction of the crowd gradually drowned out my yard. Obviously, if we don't come up with an explanation, the neighbors will never stand on our side. Seeing this, Zhongtingting bowed to the crowd and choked up, "Thank you all for speaking up for me. After having so many meals at Uncle Wang's house, it's okay to endure some grievances. Since their family doesn't like me, I'll just go back. There's no need to be disliked here anymore." After speaking, she wiped her tears and was about to run outside. I was almost infuriated by her words that evaded the important and shifted the contradiction. When she was about to leave the yard, I shouted loudly, "Wait!" I thought about it and felt that it wasn't time to show the surveillance footage yet. This is currently my only trump card and cannot be exposed too early. Thinking of this, I walked up to her step by step. With an apologetic smile, "I'm sorry, Ting Ting. Your Uncle Wang spoke a bit harshly. I definitely trust you. But it is precisely because I trust you that I want you to clear your suspicion early and restore your innocence." After speaking, I cast my gaze on everyone around. The only way to find out the truth is to see it with our own eyes. So everyone be a witness. As long as Ting Ting doesn't have anything from my house on her, I will definitely go to your house in person to apologize. In rural areas, people don't pay much attention to privacy. After all, losing gold is not a small matter. This is the most effective way. Seeing this, many people nodded. "Ting Ting, if you didn't steal it, then show them." "That's right. Letting them search you can also restore your innocence." Zhong Ting Ting bit her lower lip, and soon tears welled up in her eyes again. She shook her head and backed away, choking up, "I didn't do it. Why don't you all believe me?" I became more and more certain of my guess in my heart. I took half a step forward and grabbed her hand, insisting, "We won't know whether to believe you until we search. Are you feeling guilty? Once she leaves the yard, this matter will be unclear." But just when I thought it would take more persuasion, Zhong Ting Ting's crying stopped. In a place where others couldn't see, she suddenly curved her lips at me. "So many of you are bullying a child like me. Can I resist? Fine, search then." I intuitively felt that her expression was wrong. But now, it was impossible not to search. In summer, the clothes are thin. If there is something, it can be felt with a touch. I started to search her pockets carefully. But as I searched, cold sweat came out. Because except for the soft touch of the fabric, there was nothing abnormal. I was stunned and subconsciously looked up and stared at Zhong Ting Ting. The latter curved a malicious smile, but her voice was still timid. "Can I leave now?" Seeing my reaction, the onlookers also realized something was wrong. To support Zhong Ting Ting, they all denounced, "If you can't find it, apologize to her. If you have a black heart, everything looks black. You even wrong a child. Ting Ting, come to my house for a meal next time. My family won't wrong you just because you had a few meals. But you said it. Remember to come and apologize in person then." Amid the disdainful taunts of the crowd, Zhong Ting Ting gave me a defiant glance. She bowed deeply to those who spoke for her again and was about to leave swaggeringly. My mind was racing rapidly. Soon, I was sweating profusely. There was nothing in the clothes. The shoes were also the most ordinary slippers and didn't seem to have been tampered with. Where on earth is it? Just when I was wondering if she had hidden the things first and planned to come and take them later. Her loosely tied bun on top of her head caught my attention. If I remember correctly, when she came to my house, her hair was down. Thinking of this, I didn't waste any more words. I strode forward and grabbed Zhong Ting Ting, who was almost out of the gate. Auntie, you're hurting me." "Hey, what's wrong with you? Are you being rough with a child?" I completely ignored everyone's reactions and pulled Zhong Ting Ting's hair. In the next second, a string of shiny gold chains and several rings fell to the ground with my movement. For a moment, everyone was looking at this scene in surprise. I sneered, "What else can you say now? Could it be that my gold necklace ran into your hair by itself?" My husband also came forward at this time. "My wife usually takes care of your food and drink. Is this how you repay us by stealing? You ungrateful person." Zhong Ting Ting still wanted to refute. At this time, my daughter also understood the situation. My daughter burst into tears and didn't give her a chance to speak at all. "Sister Ting Ting, did you befriend me just to steal things from my house? Woo, I hate you. Who can't cry and act pitiful?" Sure enough, The neighbors who were originally on Zhongtingting's side also cooled their faces at this time. I thought this child was pitiful and helped speak for her. As a result, who says it isn't so? At such a young age, she is so calculating. Even we were almost deceived. Truly, one can never know what's on another's mind. How can a child so young be so good at lying? In the end, Zhongtingting still lacks experience. Facing this scene of being caught red-handed, her face changed again and again. Finally, her face flushed red. After shouting, "I didn't," she pushed aside the people in front of her and ran away in a panic. And as she left, the discussions among the surrounding neighbors still didn't stop. Many neighbors who had just given me cold stares now began to apologize to me. Among these people, there are many nosy big mouths. I believe that after tonight, Zhongtingting will become famous in the village. Amid the comforting words of everyone, my first step plan has basically been achieved. But this is still far from enough. Just like this, at most it will make others think that she has a bad character. As long as she does a little good deed, everyone will think that the wrong things she did before were just a momentary lapse of judgment. So I need to let her gradually exhaust others' expectations of her. Just like Dodda, without the help of others, she can't cause any waves on her own. That night, the news that Zhongtingting had stolen things spread throughout the village. Zhongtingting's grandma felt ashamed. To vent her anger, she beat her up severely. The crying and cursing continued until midnight before barely subsiding. In the surveillance records outside the yard, for many days after that, Zhongtingting walked with a limp when she went out. But unfortunately, after the last incident, everyone was afraid that she would steal from their own homes. No one was willing to keep her for a meal. She wandered around aimlessly in the village like a headless fly but found that no one cared. She could only slink back and continue to eat leftover and stale food. In addition to these, I also found other clues in the surveillance. But before I could take action, some villagers had already knocked loudly on my gate. "Wang Hao. Is Wang Hao there? Your daughter has fallen into the water." Hearing this news, I felt dizzy. I was supported by my husband so that I didn't fall. I rushed to the pond that the villagers mentioned with weak legs. This is the only way for my daughter to go to school. There has never been an accident before. My daughter was soaked all over and lying on the shore. Her face was pale, and when she coughed, water still came out. I held her in my arms heartbrokenly, and tears couldn't stop flowing down. "What on earth is going on?" She weakly pointed to one side and said hoarsely, "Mom, those hooligans deliberately pushed me into the water. If it weren't for Sister Tingting being nearby, I might be dead by now." Only then did I notice that Zhongtingting was also soaked all over. There was a hideous cut on her calf. Blood was mixing with water and flowing down, looking quite intimidating. It's Zhongtingting again. Every time she can appear in time. But how can there be such a coincidence? Seeing that the surrounding villagers were starting to whisper again and their attitudes towards her had changed, I realized that this was her plan to clear her name. Seeing me glaring at her fiercely. But she completely ignored my angry stare. She took half a step forward with a limp and said softly, "I'm sorry, Aunt. Stealing last time was my fault. I know I was wrong. If only I could have drowned in the water when I just saved my younger sister. Then I could make up for my sins." After saying that, she started crying. Many villagers had already been moved by her attitude and echoed, "In the end, she is just a child. Which child doesn't make mistakes?" That's right. In the end, she is still a kind child. Otherwise, how could she risk her life to save others? She is also a poor child. Given her family situation, stealing can be understood. Obviously, they had already forgiven this malicious child for me in their words. I clenched my fist tightly to restrain the urge to go forward and slap Zhongtingting several times. "Tingting, Aunt misunderstood you. But how did you appear by the river? Did you appear as soon as those hooligans pushed Yaya down?" As soon as I finished speaking, before Zhongtingting could answer, the surrounding neighbors couldn't control themselves. "I say, Wang Hao's wife. You can't be so cold-blooded. Tingting's leg is still bleeding to save your daughter. And you start interrogating first. That's right. Everyone makes mistakes. Let alone a child. What you said makes everyone's hearts cold. Don't be afraid, Tingting. Come to Aunt Lee's. Truly, kindness is taken for granted. Facing the protection of the people around her, Zhong Tingting appeared even more aggrieved. She smiled at the villagers who spoke for her. That pale little face was extremely pitiful. Uncles and aunts, thank you. I know I made a mistake. Aunt misunderstanding me is what I deserve. I saved younger sister Yaya just to atone for my sins. Don't make things difficult for Aunt. She looked at me and said, Aunt, since younger sister is fine, I'll leave first. Otherwise, if I go home late, there will be no food to eat. Zhong Tingting was about to walk home limping with that still bleeding leg. Nosy Aunt Lee stopped her and protectively held her. Don't be afraid, Tingting. Come to Aunt Lee's house for a meal later. Wang Hao's wife, you must give this child an explanation today. Other villagers echoed one after another. I smiled, don't be in a hurry. I just wonder if it's too coincidental. Last time when Yaya was bullied by hooligans, Tingting was there. This time when Yaya was pushed into the water, she was also there. And how could a little girl save someone in the river? Did Tingting go into the water as soon as Yaya was pushed down? Zhong Tingting sniffed. Aunt, I know you suspect me. But I really just happened to pass by and saw younger sister in the river. Younger sister was very uncomfortable being choked by the water. When I saw her suffering, I didn't care about anything else. Even now, Zhong Tingting was still lying. I sneered and stopped acting. Don't pretend. Dare you say you don't know the hooligans who pushed Yaya? Yaya treats you sincerely. And this is how you use her. Zhong Tingting was startled and vehemently denied. Aunt, what are you talking about? I know you don't like me. But you can't slander me like this. Seeing that she was still pretending, my blood pressure shot straight to my head. After stuffing the child into my husband's arms, regardless of everyone's astonishment, I grabbed her hair. Forcibly pressed her face in front of the surveillance video on my phone. Look at it. You say you are innocent. Then why would these people come to your house to find you? From the very beginning, you have been calculating against my daughter. It's fine if you find people to surround her. Now you even pushed her directly into the water. With such a malicious heart, who are you pretending for? I installed surveillance cameras outside the yard that can capture the alley entrance between my house and Zhong Tingting's house. At that time, I deliberately installed them covertly, so that no one has found them until now. The video recorded the scene of Zhong Tingting contacting those hooligans. Judging from their body language, they were quite intimate. Obviously, they are old acquaintances. Zhong Tingting let out a scream. Ashamed and angry, she waved her hand and was about to snatch my phone. This doesn't prove anything. Yours is fake. I fiercely grabbed her hair and threw her directly into the mud by the pond. I scolded, fake? Then tell me the reason why I would frame you. Look, everyone in the neighborhood, take a look. It's obvious who is harming whom. At this time, my daughter's words interrupted my anger. It also attracted the already shocked villagers. My daughter Yaya tugged at the corner of my clothes with her little hands. Mom, can you let me see the video? I put the phone in front of her. Softly said, good baby, see if there is the person who pushed you into the water? Everyone nervously waited for her response. But what arrived before her testimony was my daughter's bursting into tears. She cried so hard that she could barely catch her breath. Mom, it's him. It's this person who touched Sister Tingting's hair. The villagers were in an uproar. And Zhong Tingting, who was lying in the mud, trembled her lips and couldn't say a word. She could only stare at me with the most resentful gaze. I still didn't want to let her go and added word by word, there have been frequent thefts in the village these days. Everyone suspects that those hooligans did it. Now there is no need to doubt. With an insider leading the way, who else could it be if not them? My experience in the past few days let me know that if things don't happen to oneself, no one can feel the same. But if everyone is on the same front, it's different. So as soon as these words were said, the neighbors who were already grumbling exploded. Ungrateful thing. How can a girl like you do such a thing? I thought she was pitiful. I really misjudged her. Not only seeking money but also harming lives. How can you be so malicious? Stop talking. Call her grandpa back and let him see in person what kind of person his granddaughter who he has raised for more than 10 years is. Zhong Tingting's face became paler inch by inch. In the end, all the blood drained away. Until she heard her grandpa being mentioned, a trace of despair and helplessness finally flashed in her eyes. She was finally afraid. She threw herself on Aunt Lee who had just defended her, grabbed her trouser leg and begged bitterly, "Please, don't let my grandpa know. He will beat me to death. I know I was wrong. Don't let him come back." Aunt Lee had just spoken for her, but I know that her family lost the most things some time ago. Seeing that her pants were smeared with mud by Zhong Tingting, she frowned in disgust. Finally, she kicked her away. Zhong Tingting fell to the ground again. Seeing that there was no hope for help, she crawled to our family with tears all over her face. She kowtowed hard on the ground and bled from her head. "I really know I was wrong. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Please plead for me. Don't let Grandpa know. Please. Auntie, I will never dare again." I know that this is because her grandpa is a very principled and strict old man. He is usually very kind to her, but this time the mistake she made has touched the old man's bottom line. She will be severely beaten if not killed. Looking at her shedding crocodile tears, everyone, including our family, remained indifferent. Because no one dares to bet again whether helping her will be bitten back by such a malicious person. No one wants to hear the story of the boy who cried wolf for the third time. Her past misdeeds have made it difficult for people to feel pity for her. In the end, this farce ended with Zhong Tingting being taken home by her grandma who rushed over after hearing the news. Before leaving, she was slapped several times hard. There was blood on her face and nose. That night, the old man who learned the news returned home. Zhong Tingting's wailing sound lasted all night. It barely subsided until early the next morning. But I know that it's just that she was beaten so hard that she couldn't make a sound. Because the sound of whips hitting flesh didn't stop all night. Early the next morning, my door was knocked on again. I opened the door and saw Zhong Tingting who was covered in bruises and congestion. She was kneeling on the ground. Beside her was the old man standing straight. "Speak." Zhong Tingting trembled violently and kowtowed heavily to me. "I'm sorry, Aunt." Then she raised her head, took out a silver ring from her pocket, and held it out to me. "Our family is poor. There is nothing to compensate you. This is my mother's ring from early years. Can you forgive me?" I didn't take it and didn't respond to her words. I just looked at her grandpa. This old man is overly upright and can't tolerate a single grain of sand. But in the end, he is the person who most hopes Zhong Tingting to live well. Otherwise, in my previous life, he wouldn't have risked his old bones to kill my whole family. It's pitiful, but it's false to say that I don't hate. Don't want the things. You go away. I then closed the door. In the surveillance, I saw them standing at my door for a long time. Then the old man bowed deeply to my door. And took Zhong Tingting, who was limping, to the next family to apologize. Before long, Zhong Tingting's injuries were mostly healed. The old man planned to take her away. Even if they apologized, the rumors and colored glasses will not disappear. It can only be said that he is indeed a wise person. As soon as they leave, my life will return to peace. My goal can also be achieved. But on the night before they planned to move away, something happened. A shrill cry for help cut through the night sky. When we arrived and took a look, there was blood all over the yard. Zhong Tingting's grandpa was lying in a pool of blood. There were several knife wounds on his stomach. He had already lost his breath. And it was Zhongtingting who made the cry for help. She was also covered in blood, just a little better than her grandpa. She was throwing herself on the old man and wailing loudly. "Grandpa, I know I was wrong. Grandpa, I will never have anything to do with them again. Open your eyes and look at me, okay? Grandpa. Grandpa." From her words, I pieced together the truth. It turns out that from the beginning to the end, she never really wanted to admit her mistake. She blamed all the beatings and sufferings she endured on our family. That night, after her grandparents fell asleep, she invited the hooligans to her own home. They plotted to attack our family. Finally, she was discovered by her grandpa. In his fury, the old man severely criticized the group and told them that if they wanted to do something, they could only step over his dead body. But this group of people were not easy to deal with after all. They were provoked. Despite Zhongtingting's obstruction, they directly stabbed the old man to death. And her grandma was lucky to escape because she was sleeping soundly. When we came, it was only 2 minutes before and after the group of hooligans fled. When I learned everything, I didn't know whether I should feel lucky or, I'm not sure what this word means. Maybe it's afraid after the fact, or something similar, or sigh. In my previous life, the old man killed my whole family. In this life, he died in our place by accident. I can't help but consider whether this is a kind of cause and effect. But in any case, the ending of everything is good for my family. We have completely escaped from the fate of the previous life. After this incident, Zhongtingting went crazy. Her grandma treated her even worse because she indirectly caused the death of her husband. Now she doesn't even have stale food to eat. Some villagers, seeing her pitiful state, would occasionally leave her some leftovers and give them to her when she wandered to their doorsteps. It was to keep her half alive. Later, when I heard news of Zhongtingting again, it was the news of her death. This winter, she accidentally drowned in the river. It was the same river where my daughter fell into the water. When she was found, she was almost frozen together with the ice on the river surface. After her grandma learned of this, she remained indifferent. She didn't even go to collect the body. In the end, it was the villagers who pooled money to bury her. I looked at the falling snowflakes outside and touched my daughter's head. She asked me, "Mom, don't you think Zhongtingting is pitiful?" I was silent for a moment and finally shook my head. People can't choose their own background. But they can choose what kind of person they want to be. Reaching this point is the result of her own degeneration. She can't blame others. Everything is retribution. It's what she deserves.